Good morning. I want to begin by just thanking so many of the members of our environmental task force for coming down to City Hall today to support this important announcement. You care so much about the future of our community, and that's exactly what we're addressing today. 4 months ago, I found myself sitting on a Ferris wheel at Shields alongside KLIN's Jack Mitchell, who, along with the United Way, had organized a day-long ride to support the relief efforts in the wake of historic flooding that had devastated communities across our state. To publicize how others could assist in the relief efforts, he and I held up a big sign with big, bold red letters that said, "Nebraska Strong." And I remember how good it felt to be doing something to help other people who needed it so desperately. Putting wheels in motion, and in this case, one really large Ferris wheel, to make a difference always feels so much better than doing nothing, than letting the magnitude of a problem overwhelm you. Looking at big challenges and meeting them head on is what we do as Nebraskans. That's who we are. The motto, "Nebraska Strong," that became our calling this year, says a lot about us as a people. We value strength. We value community. We value determination to overcome the odds. We value our resiliency. These values we embrace bring us here today. We have an opportunity to act on our values, and in doing so, safeguard the future of Lincoln for generations to come. Severe weather events like this past spring's bomb cyclone, the largest natural disaster in our state's history, and an event that threatened our local water supply. And these are no longer hypothetical situations with hypothetical consequences. We no longer have to work hard to imagine how severe weather events might impact our safety and security, our infrastructure, our economy, and our quality of life. We know that the time for us to act is now. We must identify and address our local vulnerabilities, paying particular attention to how we safeguard our water supply and proactively protect Lincoln's property and our people. Going forward, it will be essential for us to harness that Nebraskan spirit of strength and resilience in order to organize and operate our city in a way that makes us both stronger today and better positioned to confront the challenges of tomorrow. To accomplish these bold aims, today we launch Lincoln's new Sustainability and Resilience Initiative, one that will bring all sectors of our community together to develop a new local climate action plan. As we look to the growing number of cities that are already building resilience in response to emerging threats related to climate change, we see good results. Excuse me. Strategies that other cities have implemented often have the added benefit of making them healthier, more attractive places to live and do business. An initiative this critical to Lincoln's future requires experienced leadership, and we are fortunate to have that expertise at our fingertips. The Veritas Group has a strong track record of creating climate action plans that address both sustainability and resilience. I am very pleased to announce that Kim Morrow, Senior Associate of Veritas Group, will lead Lincoln's efforts. At this time, I'd like to invite Kim to give us more details on how we will put the wheels in motion for this important initiative over the next year. Kim?
Good morning. My name is Kim Morrow, and I'm a Senior Associate with Veritas Group. As a longtime sustainability advocate in the Lincoln community and as a member of the Mayor's Environmental Task Force, I am particularly delighted to have the opportunity to work with Mayor Gaylor Bair's administration on this important sustainability and climate resilience initiative. Climate resilience planning is an emerging practice that forward-looking cities around the United States are taking on in the face of increasing extreme weather events. Here in Lincoln, we are experiencing heavier downpours, more frequent flooding, hotter summers, and more extreme storms. These events impact our health, our safety, our economy, our transportation networks, our food supply, and the biodiversity of our region, to name a few. We can't change the fact that these extreme weather events are going to continue to affect us and most likely intensify, but we can change our response to them. Today marks the day when we stop wondering about how these issues might affect us in the future, and instead we take hold of addressing them now. Today marks the day when we stop arguing about why climate change is happening, and instead start jointly creating solutions. Today marks the day when we stop looking at a climate-altered future with fear, and instead embrace it and trust in our capacity to be resilient. Resiliency planning takes a 360-degree approach to understanding the unique cross-sectoral vulnerabilities that climate impacts may expose, and creates a way for a diverse group of community leaders to build strategies to increase resilience. The end result will not only be a plan, but a sense of ownership and engagement among community participants who now know what they can do to build a resilient Lincoln. We will build on the important work that has already been done on the LEAP plan to add climate resilience to the way we do business as a city. We will create a new climate action plan that incorporates the LEAP elements, strengthens goals, and clarifies strategies. We will work with an internal working group, a community task force, the Mayor's Environmental Task Force, and the public to develop relevant and actionable strategies that will make our city a regional leader in climate preparedness and sustainability. The project officially began this week and will run through June 30th, 2020. In the first phase of the project, the Veritas Group team will gather a wealth of information on past sustainability work, climate hazards, demographics, emergency preparedness, and key indicators for our community. In the second phase of the project, we will begin an interactive planning process with a diverse climate resiliency task force, as well as the Mayor's Environmental Task Force. Over a 9-month period, we will carefully examine Lincoln's climate hazards and develop strategies to make ourselves a more resilient community. We will hold 2 public forums during the process to gather insight and input from Lincoln residents. Alongside this planning process, I will lead the Mayor's Environmental Task Force meetings and will use the members as sounding boards, expert advisors, and research assistants to inform the climate action planning process. Mayor's aide Kevin Cass will be the main point of contact for all other sustainability issues. I look forward to working with all involved and helping Lincoln to embrace its future as a resilient and thriving community. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have any questions from the media or folks in the audience? Do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Nicole, 1011. Just what gets you excited about this and why is this so important?
It's about the future of Lincoln. We come from a long tradition of people who have been great stewards of natural resources, people who dug wells for us knowing they would never drink from them, the people who in the 100 years ago paid for and created a water supply for us in Ashland and piped it to us so that we could grow as a community. Now it's our turn to step up and to ensure that this community is sustainable and thriving for the next generations. I mean, I'm raising my kids here. We all have family, grandchildren. We want to make sure that we leave this city better than we found it, and this is an opportunity to do that in a tremendous way. Mary.
I have no questions. I just want to say Kim Morrow will be an excellent choice.
Yes, she will.
Congratulate you on your vision.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank all of you for pushing for this kind of work to be done locally. At the local level, this matters so much. A lot of people think of this as something that is just something at the federal level, but we have local impacts. We've lived them recently. We will continue to live them, and so it's up to us to address them and be strong together.
In what ways would this be different from the work done under Mayor Bidler?
Yeah, well, we do have the Lincoln Environmental Action Plan, and that was an important first step to look at sustainable practices throughout the city and county. Sustainable efforts will continue, and this will be amplified by a focus on resilience. How do we harden our infrastructure? How do we make sure that we are creating frameworks for decision making in City Hall that take into account building for and strengthening in the face of severe weather impacts? The next comprehensive plan update for 2050 will need to fold into concepts of resilience across the community. And I'll let Kim maybe come up and explain a little bit more about how those two will be blended to make us, even stronger in the face of what we are confronting.
Yes, I meant to include that in my remarks, actually. This plan will develop in concert with the comprehensive planning process to make sure that, as we said earlier, climate resiliency planning and that perspective is just woven into the way we do business as a city. Up to now, a lot of times sustainability or environmental issues were kind of siloed, like in their own issues, but we have seen that as sustainability topics get implemented and get more sophisticated, they are just owned by the departments, by the planning groups, by the way in which we do business, and that's the future. It just needs to become part of our fiber.
And just for folks that maybe aren't as expert as you, getting it from being on its own report to being part of how development and all of that infrastructure development, it's kind of making it more ingrained in the city's practices. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is an actual formal planning process, both this one that we're doing in the coming year and then informing the comp plan planning process. So there's a lot of cross-pollination, you might say, that will occur between those two processes. And then beyond that is the implementation phase, where we'll work with various departments and community organizations to actually implement the strategies.
I think one example of how this can inform our thinking is that as we think about when we need a second water supply, the predictions about when that needs to occur have largely been based on population growth. But a climate resiliency and a sustainability lens would say, okay, we need to definitely take into account population growth, but what about the decline in the snowpack in the Rocky Mountains that feeds our water sources in Nebraska? If that's declining, we need to look at the data there and start to evaluate whether or not our timeline and our horizon is accurate. Perhaps it needs to be a little sooner to account for changes in other factors that affect the adequacy of our water supply. So it's a more holistic approach, a more realistic approach to delivering services that Nebraskans expect and depend upon for our very survival. Yes.
So what we saw from the flooding stuff is how much it affects growing food in Nebraska, which is one of our biggest things. Will this new plan include focus on food and local food and how we're going to keep our food supply secure from
I love food and I want our supply to be secure. Do you want to address that, Kim?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question, and food security is one of the most important issues to address when we're looking at climate resilience. And as one of our local experts, Tim Renna, often points out, we only generally have about a 3-day supply of food in our local grocery stores. There's a lot of great work that's already been done in terms of identifying locations within the city of Lincoln to encourage more urban agriculture. And so the degree to which we can start producing some of our own food as a community means the more resilient we're going to be. So absolutely.
My question is, there's lots of other governmental entities and resources available here in Lincoln. The University of Nebraska, there's lots of resources there, and I'm sure Kim's well aware of them. But they also have an impact on the planning and going forward in the Lincoln Public Schools and the NRD and the county. Will there be coordination with all of with those entities as well?
Yes, absolutely. We will be, one of the main vehicles for the planning process will be a climate resiliency task force that we will assemble. We don't have the details on that at this time, but we will be looking at appointing community leaders who represent some of those most important sectors of our community. And the reason is precisely what you just brought up. We need to be informed of other strategies and policies, but we also need them to join in the conversation to understand how climate hazards are going to affect their operations and who across the table or across town might have a unique opportunity or partnership to address some of those issues.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to have a Q&A session during the METF meeting immediately following this. So we wanted to wrap this up and say if we have any more questions from the media, we could let them get their questions in, and then we'll have our meeting immediately after this, and we'll answer as many questions from you guys as possible. Did we have any more questions from 1011 or Channel 8?
I guess my biggest question is like, what's next? What's happening now? Did you say the task force hasn't been established yet, but yet they're meeting afterwards?
No, the Mayor's Environmental Task Force is an existing task force that's been around for a number of years, and they have a monthly meeting, and that's what follows this press conference. There's an additional task force that will be created for the project called a Climate Resilience Task Force, and we'll be looking at that in coming weeks.
Thank you so much for being here, being a part of this. I look forward to working with all of you, and let's get to work.